In the summer of 2024, Phoenix recorded multiple consecutive days above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, among the hottest sustained stretches in the city's history. Not a single spike, not even for one afternoon, but prolonged heat at levels once considered physiologically extreme. Instead, Phoenix is accelerating. Every year, roughly 50,000 new residents move in. Since 2020, home prices have surged by more than 40%, even as summer temperatures keep climbing. In one of the hottest cities on Earth, the fastest-moving asset isn't water or energy, it's real estate. Climate scientists call this a livability threshold, the point where a city's habitability isn't a given anymore. Thresholds don't announce themselves. They don't break cities. They quietly change who can afford to stay. And yet, the systems underneath are still working. So what's actually holding Phoenix together? Phoenix's danger isn't the heat. It's what the city needs to survive it. During summer 2024, Arizona utilities managed 113 consecutive days above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, issuing repeated conservation alerts as grid operators watched electricity demand approach system limits. On August 4th, when Phoenix hit 116 degrees Fahrenheit, both APS and SRP set all-time peak demand records, delivering over 23,000 megawatts while running near maximum capacity. Everything working at once isn't resilience. It's stress. Every summer afternoon, Phoenix runs on a single assumption: that electricity will always be there when temperatures peak. When heat spikes, electricity demand surges. When demand surges, the grid strains. When the grid strains, voltage drops. When voltage drops, water pumps slow and cooling systems weaken. When cooling fails, hospital admissions spike, precisely when the grid has the least capacity left. Phoenix's life support doesn't fail in pieces. It fails as a chain. This stress isn't isolated. Electricity doesn't just power air conditioning. It powers the massive pumps that move water across the desert. If voltage drops during a grid strain event, electric pumps slow and water pressure falls across the system, affecting some neighborhoods almost immediately. Cooling, hydration, and medical care all depend on the same interdependent circuit. The systems underneath are still working. That reliability creates confidence. Confidence fuels growth. Growth adds demand. More homes, more data centers, more compressors cycling at the same time. In 2024, data centers and residential expansion pushed Arizona's utilities to deliver over 23,000 megawatts on peak days, eclipsing the previous year's records while capacity margins continue to shrink. Phoenix doesn't collapse under heat. It bounces on it. As long as power flows without interruption, the city feels livable. Not safe, not comfortable, just functional. And because this strain is mostly invisible, residents don't experience danger. They experience normalcy. The city is betting everything on the flawless operation of that invisible circuit. So if Phoenix's survival depends on systems operating near their limits, what keeps those systems under constant stress, even at night? Phoenix doesn't just endure extreme heat. It amplifies it. The city was built to function in a desert, but its design traps heat instead of releasing it. Asphalt and concrete absorb solar radiation all day. Wide roads and minimal vegetation maximize exposure. Dense development and reduced airflow keep warm air close to the ground. By sunset, the city has already stored massive amounts of heat, with few pathways for it to escape. In July 2024, Phoenix recorded 31 consecutive nights where temperatures never dropped below 90 degrees Fahrenheit. While surrounding desert areas cooled into the 70s, the city remained dangerously hot through the entire night, often 15 to 20 degrees warmer than nearby rural land. This is why Phoenix can't reset. When nighttime temperatures never drop below 90 degrees Fahrenheit for weeks at a time, heat becomes cumulative, not episodic. When nighttime temperatures stay elevated, buildings never release the heat they absorb during the day. Roads, walls, and parking lots remain warm until morning. The next day doesn't start from neutral. It starts already overheated. Each cycle stacks on the last. What makes Phoenix different from other hot cities is how extreme this effect becomes. Phoenix's urban heat island is among the most severe in North America, driven by unusually low vegetation coverage, even for a desert metro, sprawling low-density development that maximizes paved surface area, and a valley geography that traps warm air instead of letting it drain away. Higher elevation cities shed heat overnight. Phoenix holds it. Evaporative cooling for vegetation could offset some stored heat, but sprawl has replaced most permeable land with pavement that absorbs and retains warmth instead. The danger isn't one brutal afternoon. It's persistence. Phoenix operates in a constant thermal surplus, with no meaningful cooling window between days. Heat stops being an event and becomes the background condition the city lives inside. And if the city never cools down, when does the body get a chance to reset? Cities don't faint. Human bodies do. When Phoenix doesn't cool down at night, the problem stops being architectural and becomes biological. The human body survives heat by dumping it through sweat, airflow, and nighttime recovery. But that system has a ceiling, and Phoenix is pushing people toward it. The hard boundary comes when heat and humidity combine to the point where sweat can no longer evaporate. Scientists call this wet bulb temperature. At that threshold, the body's cooling system simply stops working. Not because you're weak, but because the air won't accept any more moisture. This is where a simple diagram matters. Heat plus humidity, sweat can evaporate, no cooling. But cooling failure isn't just a daytime problem. When nights stay hot, the body never fully offloads heat. Core temperature remains elevated. The heart keeps working harder. The nervous system stays activated. Survival becomes continuous instead of episodic. That leads to the next breakdown, the metabolic heat tax. When the environment won't cool you, your body spends energy trying anyway, pumping blood to the skin, maintaining sweat response, regulating internal temperature hour after hour. That constant effort drains glucose reserves, stresses the cardiovascular system, and accelerates fatigue. You're burning energy just to stay alive. And when your body is burning energy 24/7, something else breaks: sleep. Deep sleep requires a drop in core body temperature. Hot nights block that drop. Sleep becomes shallow, fragmented, and shorter, even if you don't consciously wake up. Over time, chronic heat exposure raises cortisol, impairs judgment, slows reaction time, and degrades emotional regulation. Heat stress becomes mental stress. Biology becomes psychology. This isn't evenly distributed. Those with powerful air conditioning, backup power, insulated homes, and flexible schedules can buy relief. Those without, outdoor workers, low-income households, the elderly, people in older housing, absorb the full physiological cost first. Inequality shows up not as discomfort, but as cognitive load, health decline, and error rates. So when heat stress becomes unavoidable for some and manageable for others, who stays and who starts quietly planning to leave? Cities don't collapse all at once. They thin out. When heat stops being an occasional hardship and becomes a constant biological tax, people don't announce an exodus. They adjust, quietly, one decision at a time, not through mass flight, through sorting. This is where Phoenix's decline doesn't look like disaster. It looks like economics. The clearest signal isn't population headlines. It's property and insurance behavior. The market pricing the future before politics or planning ever do. In Phoenix, that repricing is already visible. In heat-exposed parts of South and West Phoenix, zip codes like 85009 and 85043, among the hottest in the metro, homeowners have seen insurance premiums jump sharply since 2020, with some policies narrowing coverage or becoming difficult to renew at all. At the same time, property values in these hotter zones have lagged the metro average, while cooler, higher elevation or better shaded areas to the north have continued to appreciate. This isn't panic selling. It's risk adjustment. When insurance hesitates, capital listens. Next come business decisions, not dramatic relocations, but quiet rebalancing. Large employers keep Phoenix offices open, but expand new teams elsewhere. Remote-first policies that began as temporary fixes quietly become permanent. Not for culture, but for resilience. The city doesn't lose jobs overnight. It loses future growth. Only later do the demographic signals appear. School enrollment softens in the hottest zip codes. Families don't frame the move as climate migration. They say it's about costs, quality of life, or opportunity. But the heat sits underneath every explanation, shaping budgets, sleep, health, and daily functioning until leaving feels less like a choice and more like relief. This is how climate pressure actually reshapes cities. Not through mass flight, through sorting. This is the silent process of climate gentrification. Those with flexibility, wealth, mobility, remote work, insurance options, exit first. Those without stay longer, absorbing higher physiological stress, higher costs, and fewer options. The city keeps operating, but with a narrowing band of resilience. Phoenix doesn't empty out. It stratifies. So if Phoenix is sorting under heat stress, separating those who can adapt from those who can't, is this pattern unique to Phoenix, or a preview of what's coming for other cities across the heat belt? Phoenix isn't failing. That's the point. It's still growing, still building, still functioning. And that's what makes it dangerous as a signal. Because Phoenix is not a warning of collapse, it's a test case. What's happening here isn't unique. It's just early. Across the heat belt, other cities are watching the same variables Phoenix is already negotiating in real time. Las Vegas, with similar desert geometry and water dependence. Tucson, smaller but warming fast. Texas metros like Austin and Dallas, where grid strain and population growth are colliding. Even Miami, where heat stress combines with humidity and flood risk to push human limits from a different direction. The lesson Phoenix offers isn't don't build in hot places. It's more unsettling than that. A city can remain economically active long after it stops being biologically forgiving. As long as air conditioning works, as long as power holds, as long as water flows, the system looks stable. Growth continues. Headlines stay optimistic. But underneath, the cost of survival shifts from infrastructure to bodies, from public systems to private coping. Cooling becomes something you buy. Sleep becomes something you protect. Health becomes something you manage around the heat. The invisible cost of that transition is hope. What happens to collective identity when people realize the city they love is no longer supporting them, but actively demanding more just to endure? And the moment survival depends on continuous energy input, the city stops being resilient. It becomes conditional. Phoenix shows how that transition happens quietly, without sirens, without evacuations, without a single breaking point. The stress spreads instead of explodes. The risk is repriced instead of announced. The city keeps operating. Even as living inside, it becomes a more personal calculation. That's why planners, insurers, utilities, and employers are paying attention, even when politicians aren't. Phoenix is answering questions other cities will have to face. But the hardest question isn't engineering. It's identity. What does it mean to live in a city that might not survive you? Which city do you think hits that limit next? Las Vegas, Tucson, Austin, Miami, or somewhere else? And if it were your city, would you adapt at any cost or leave early, quietly?